Hot economics and code politics between China and the U.S. American business tycoons, including Bill Gates, Tim Cook, and Elon Musk, have lined up to visit China this year, for whom China rolled out the red carpets. However, political dialogue between the two sides got off to a slow start, with the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken's trip postponed over the so-called spy balloon incident. U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin could not even get an appointment with his Chinese counterpart during his trip to Asia. The awkwardness was only slightly lifted when Secretary of the Treasury Janet Yellen finally made it here in the Chinese capital early July. Some media are dubbing this current picture as hot economics and cold politics. Is that an accurate description of the situation? Can we compartmentalize the two tracks for long? I'm pleased to be joined from Shanghai by Manuel Menendez, a veteran American businessman who first came to China in 1979. He's now the founder and CEO of MCM Group Holdings. Mr. Menendez, welcome to The Point. So, as I said, since beginning of this year, as soon as the COVID restrictions were lifted, U.S. business magnates have been flocking to China, and they were warmly received. Bill Gates was even received and held talks with Chinese President Xi Jinping. So what were driving these business people, and what explains the Chinese reception?
Oh, I think these are significant markets for those particular entrepreneurs. And I think over the years, they've learned how to navigate cooperation, even though sometimes there's some differences. They understand that the markets for the U.S. and for China are very significant, and they're not going away. So in our last conversation, we talked about decoupling, which is not going to happen. And they are living proof. They're companies that they've established that there is no decoupling.
Are you concerned about the cooler political atmosphere between the two sides? As I mentioned, you know, the dialogue that is grudgingly going on between the two sides. Are you concerned?
I've been concerned anytime there's been a hiccup in the relations since the opening period to now. There's been hiccups as we go along each chapter. There's always a new chapter. I think I call this chapter 5. First 10 years was chapter 1, second 10 years was chapter 2, but we're on chapter 5. And I think there's challenges in each chapter. I am concerned, but I am also excited and delighted that there's been some momentum created. I talked about momentum before. You know, the first and most difficult thing when you have business momentum is the first move of energy. You use the most energy. And then as you keep momentum going, you use less and less energy, less and less resistance. And I think we started having that. Secretary Blinken coming was great. Secretary Yellen, I think, did a fabulous job of speaking directly and candidly and addressing some tough issues, but had, I think, a wonderful spirit of saying we can agree to disagree on certain things, and let's work on common areas of common interest and then move the world forward with the two world's largest economies. So I was very excited about Secretary Yellen's visit.
Well, some observers are less excited, saying that basically she was sending very few new messages, and she continued to say the United States will continue to diversify critical supply chains and take targeted measures in areas concerning national security. Do you foresee there will be specific policy changes on the part of the United States when it comes to investing in China?
There could be. I mean, I don't think anyone has a crystal ball that will say that specifically. But I think the key point is that she came. We've had 2 secretaries of President Biden's cabinet come within a month. I think more will come. And I think on the economic front, when it comes to economic U.S.-China economic relations, I think that we are making some momentum. So coming and addressing the issues and starting to talk about some specific actionable items, I think that's the right message, the right situation. Yeah, there are going to be still. I think Secretary Yellen said it well. There are areas that we disagree on, but we have to talk about those and get clarity of what what does that mean, and I think the clarity only comes from meeting and more discussions.
Well, absolutely. At the same time, the United States will be going into another election cycle. And that
Yes.
is often worrying because relations with China or trade with China could be used in a uber simplistic way to attract votes. Are you potentially concerned about that? Do you think some of the strong rhetoric have finally quieted down and people are seeing the picture clear a little bit more clearer after the fiasco we witnessed surrounding the tariff war?
I think, well, the 301 area we have to definitely address in the next round of discussions. I think Secretary Raimondo will be coming over and other trade representatives. I think we need to get into the detail of some of the trade sanctions that were implemented by President Trump and then continued with President Biden. We need to really examine those lists and see what could be freed up. But yes, I am definitely concerned. There will be tremendous rhetoric, and I would say to the Chinese public, just be prepared for it, because right now we're in the presidential hunting season, where you have on the Republican side, I think it's 10 or 12 candidates vying for positions, and you have a bunch of Democrats on the Democratic side. And China is in the crosshairs of everyone because they have to show to the American people that they'll be tough on U.S.-China relations. But I think there's the reality of primaries where people are fighting to get their primary nomination. And then after presidents get into power, typically, I think things get more calmer and normalize, and I'm hoping that will be the case in 2024. But it's going to be, the next 18 months is going to be, I think, a rocky road for a lot of rhetoric on U.S.-China relations. That's going to definitely happen.
Yeah, well,
it's already happening already.
Yeah. Well, in the United States, whenever they talk about trade with China, that's good. It's all the things, all the cheap commodities and quality products slowly coming from China. But on the other hand, people never forget to mention human rights, one-party rule, communism. And their rationale is, why are you rewarding a country with bad human rights record by giving them money, by buying their goods, by increasing your trade with? What is your answer to such questions and such way of thinking?
Well, typically I try to avoid those issues because I'm a businessman. I think that each country has its own unique challenges, and I think there's room in the world for more than one type of system. So I think that if we just consider China's way, over 5,000 years, they have their own history, their own culture, their own system. We have 247 years of U.S. history. We have our own structure. But it doesn't mean that our structure and other structures in the world can't coexist. So I think that the proof of that has been the 40 years of tremendous economic relations between the two countries. And I think that should continue.
What is the single most important tip, if you were to provide any, to a fellow foreign business person who wants to be in China and continue to prosper in that market? What would it be? What would you say?
I think that first of all, the market is significant and large, but I think my approach has always been to try to come with whatever business you're trying to establish, come with an open mind, understand that that China's opening period started in 1979, and as China develops, it's not such a mature system. There's still a lot of room for development because it's in that 40-some-year period. So just listen, understand, and really have mutual understanding. I said this before, mutual understanding is not something that's easy to get to. It requires lots of discussion. Mm-hmm. But when you're starting a business, if you have good and mutual understanding, And you always start off with the principle of mutual respect. You have to respect that you're in a foreign country. There's rules and regulations in the country, and understand what the rules and regulations are. Don't, I tell a lot of my Western friends, don't come to China and say, oh, this rule or that rule, I hate it, I don't like it. Well, you know, my suggestion is don't come then. If you don't understand what the rules and regulations are, that's what they are today. Are they changing? Yes. Is China changing them? Yes, step by step and slowly. But come not with the attitude or view of negativism that this is bad, this is bad, this is bad. Don't come. Wait until you like the conditions. And the last thing is make sure that whatever deal you do, there's true mutual benefit in a sustainable way, not just in an immediate way. So those are the three things: always mutual understanding, mutual benefit, and mutual respect.
Manuel Menendez, founder and CEO of MCM Group Holdings. When we come back, people-to-people exchanges between China and the U.S. slided along with bilateral political relations over the past few years. What brought this on? Stay tuned.